Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you hold on to that voice that says you can do it. On today's episode, I'm interviewing the newest podcast host to join Be the Change Media Network, Zarin Khan. Zarin is the host of This Stays Between Us, and the podcast slogan is more than just a podcast, a mic for the girls at the back. So, with that incredible slogan to get us started, let's dive into this episode featuring Zarin Khan.
So my name is Zarin. I am 21. I love to write stories, and recently I've decided, well, I want to share them too. And so I've started podcasting, bought myself a nice microphone, and I've decided that I want to share stories from my culture and how the women in my culture, the way they, in a sense, have been taught to shrink themselves, but how to help them rise again and be more than who they've been taught to be, and to really own their interests and their dreams and themselves as they are.
I love that. I think that was such a wonderful introduction. And here you are sitting with your nice mic, and we're ready to go,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. So, can you tell me about what got you interested in storytelling? And I think it's incredible that, like you said, you've been writing stories and now we're able to translate them into this podcast form. Can you tell me about what got you interested in storytelling and representing your culture and your experiences in this way?
So growing up, I'd always go to the library with my dad, but I would never find books that contained characters like me from my cultural background. So I'm a Bengali girl. I'm from the South Asian culture, but I would never find books that had South Asian protagonists as the main character. And if there were, their stories were very much defined by, oh, arranged marriages, strict parents. There was no nuance. There was no room to be more than the labels confined on them. And that got me into storytelling because I realized, well, for the future me, for the future girl who goes into the library in the hope of finding herself within the book, she'll find one. She'll find one that has her story with its nuance, its beauty, and the thought put into it. So that's what really drew me towards writing stories. I feel like writing is almost like a mirror. What you see on the page, it's pieces of you, but in a different light. And writing can be a very brave thing in the sense where you decide, am I ready to look at myself in a different light on the page? Am I ready to see what I've come up with and own it as a part of me? And so to tell these stories from my culture has been almost a sense of, am I stepping away from what is expected of me and am I doing the right thing? But then when I hear messages from my friends or from girls who've listened to the podcast, to like little teasers, they're like, oh, I resonate with this. Thank you for sharing this. I've never thought about it in this way, but I feel that it's really empowering me. And I'm like, oh wow. So maybe I'm not doing something wrong after all.
I love that. And I think that idea of representation and seeing yourself in stories is so important. And the way that you put it is so beautiful. I love talking with you. And of course, we've had a couple of calls because the way that you talk is so poetic. I think I told you this,
Thank
but
you.
I'm so
Thanks.
excited that you are now putting this into podcasting format because the way that you're speaking just sounds so beautiful. And so I'm super excited that we're
And yours as well. I love
Thank
your
you.
voice.
Thank you. I feel like the American accent's a little bit jarring sometimes, but that's okay.
No, it's really nice and sweet.
That's good. But tell me about the interest in podcasting. And as someone who has written stories and is now moving into podcasting, what are the differences that you found so far? What are you able to do with a podcast that maybe you weren't able to do with stories when you're writing stories, and maybe vice versa? Tell me a little bit about that, transitioning into podcasting and then the differences in the mediums for you.
Hmm. That's an interesting question because when writing, I can shut away my thoughts in a notebook. No one's going to see them, no one's going to know. But when I'm podcasting, I'm speaking them out literally into the air. I'm turning silence into sound. And it's scary because it's like now I have to really own my words. I have to really stand firm by them and not waver in the face of fear. Fear of what people will say, fear of what people will think. So I liken going from writing to podcasting as someone stepping out of their shell, because that shell that you're in is like this safe little space where you keep your writing to yourself. You keep your words to yourself. You don't share it out loud. But when you're podcasting, you're literally speaking it. You have no room to hide. That's the thing about it. And because you have no room to hide, you you develop a sense of I've got to do this. I've got to go through with it anyway. And I'd say that I'm nearly there with stepping out of the shell.
Well, with the podcast coming out very soon, that is going to be
Mm,
the stepping out of the shell moment. And
yeah.
that's the perfect segue into me asking, can you tell everyone a little bit about your podcast and the stories they can expect to hear in the podcast? And then tell me the story behind how you came up with the idea. Yeah, give me a sneak peek for our listeners.
Ooh, okay. So what really got me into starting my podcast, which I've titled This Stays Between Us, linking back to my themes of secrecy and, keeping that sort of intimate connection between myself and the audience who are waiting to hear something that might resonate with them. And usually the things that resonate with us are things we don't say out loud often, we keep them buried within. So to have that intimate, quiet space where it's just me and the person listening, I like that a lot. I like the sense of comfort it brings and the space it opens to be yourself and be as authentic and truthful as possible. You asked me what else can my audience expect? So I've been brainstorming lots of different ideas and I've been focusing a lot on finding yourself. So episode 1 is focused on how to find yourself despite someone defining you for who they think you should be, but stepping away from that and actively working on being more than what they're trying to shrink you to be. And so, episode 1 is a journey of me learning to own the identity that I wanted, own my courage, my voice, and let someone else's criticism be like air. And hence it's titled Let Their Words Be Like Air. In terms of what you can expect from the podcast, I want to look into culture. I want to look into clothing. For example, in South Asian culture, we have the salwar kameez, which is a three-piece set. So nice dress, loose trousers, and dupatta, which goes across. But the salwar kameez takes on different meanings for different people from different generations as well. For example, for the older generation who, when they first came to the UK, it's a sign of them holding on to their roots. But for the generation that came after, the salwar kameez could be a sign of trying to balance between the culture you're now born into, Western culture, and the culture of your parents, and knowing how do you balance between both, and can there be a balance, or is it dancing almost and losing your feet? And then for the generation that comes afterwards, it's like, well, I want to learn to own my culture, and at the same time I'm told to be more like this instead. So the battle has never really ended, and that's something that I want to explore. Further to this, I'm exploring this concept of tawakkul, and tawakkul is an Arabic word which relates to trusting in God. So it's a word that Muslims use to relate to trusting in God. And during your journey of your life, you'll have moments of difficulty where you don't quite know what to do, whether something's right for you. And so, tawakkul, how do you develop that? How do you develop that trust? And what do you do when that trust feels like a very thin string and you can't hold on to it? In addition, I'll be exploring friendship, love, romance, all the things that us South Asian girls were told not to talk about because it's shameful. But is it? If it's something we all feel anyway? And I will say that there will be a special episode focusing on a Bollywood movie that I used to watch growing up called Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, and it's about this girl and this boy, and they fall in love, but he only notices her when she changes herself to fit his standards of what beauty should be. And I find that so jarring. And I think it's important to talk about that so that women who may watch that movie or may recognize this kind of trope within all the movies they see, they learn that they don't have to change themselves to be admired or appreciated or for another man to find them attractive. They don't have to change themselves to fit that. So that is another thing that I am excited to release.
That was such a wonderful promo. I think if that doesn't get people to listen to the podcast, I don't know what will. So I hope everybody that's listening goes
Oh,
and
thank
checks it out when it
you.
comes out. That is just amazing. So I think my question after that summary and quick overview of the podcast is why haven't you done it yet? What has been holding you back from producing it? Are there any kind of hardships or even kind of mental hurdles that you faced? Everybody has those things and they need that push sometimes to get it out there.
Hmm.
Is there anything
Hmm.
like that for you? What stopped you from putting this out there months, even maybe years ago? Because it sounds like you've been thinking about it a lot and it's going to be incredible. But tell me about that. Are there any blocks that have kind of stopped you from doing it so far?
That That is so true because usually when I'm in a quiet moment, maybe walking somewhere, I'll be in my daydream and I'll be thinking about, oh, this is the show that I want to produce one day. And it'll just be a happy daydream, but it won't be something more. Until when I went on my placement year, I worked as an engineer and I lived by myself for the first time. So that was my first time living alone, being independent, making my own choices, and having no one to tell me what I could and could not do. So having that sense of freedom and that uncertainty about where I'm going and what I'm choosing to do, it made me learn to trust myself and trust my voice and my instincts. Before that, I'd been living with my family, being the obedient daughter. My parents would say otherwise, but, trying to at least, not really knowing how to trust what I wanted. But when I lived away, I learned to trust where I want my life to go. And I worked as an engineer, and it was great because I got to talk to different people. I got to earn money, and I got to be an independent adult. But what I realized was this work wasn't singing to me in the sense that it really did not speak to my creative self. And I realized that do I want to go down a route of work where I don't feel creative and inspired every day? And I realized what I loved most about my job was the conversations I had with people. I loved talking to them, getting to know their stories, the things that made them tick, the things that drove them. And what if I had a career where I held conversations with different people, learned more about them, and shared those stories with the world? And so, literally, a couple days after placement ended and I moved back home, I realized that's exactly what I'm going to do now. This is what I want. I want to share stories and tell them because this speaks to me so much more.
That is amazing. And I'm so glad that we were able to connect as well. And I get to be on this journey with you and just see you
Thank
put out
you.
these conversations and do this work because it's going to be incredible. My last question for you is lots of young people want to create change, want to make a difference. And I think that you really are doing that through these conversations that you're putting out into the world and showing up as your authentic self. I think that takes a lot of
Hmm.
bravery, which I love.
Yeah.
What advice would you want to share with young people who might want to make change but don't know how to get started with that work?
I'd say silence the voices of the people around you who are telling you that you're not capable and listen to the voice inside you, that one small voice inside you that says, go on, do it. You want to. And listen to that voice and run with it. Buy that microphone, start writing that episode, and speak. Just speak as if no one's watching. No one's there to say, what is this person doing? Just do it anyway, and hold on to that voice that said you can do it, and silence all the others.
It was so wonderful to talk with Zarin, and I am so excited to be a part of this incredible journey that Zarin has in front of her with her podcast. She has so many stories lined up to share with you, so tune in to This Stays Between Us when it launches on Friday, August 15th, 2025. If you're listening after that date and the podcast has already launched, what are you waiting for? Go have a listen to This Stays Between Us right now, wherever you're listening to this podcast. But before you go, I want to remind you of Zarin's great advice, because change comes when you hold on to that voice that says you can do it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find This Stays Between Us on Instagram, and I've included all of the info to check out the podcast in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I'm working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests and incredible hosts like Zarin. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment, because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.